The Mets win their first series of 2026. They did not get a sweep, and boy, is there a lot to unpack from just the 3 games of the 2026 season. Welcome in another edition of the Bleav in Mets pod. That is Jack McKessie. I am Chris Schubert. The season is underway. 3 down, 159 to go. Jack, you texted me a little bit before the show today, and you're like, what an annoying loss. We'll get to the one loss that the Mets had in this series, but baseball is back. How are you, my friend?
I feel like this one series was kind of a microcosm of my Mets fandom experience, where it's like I felt all of the highs and Luis Robert walk-off home run in the second game, knocking Paul Skeens out in the first inning of opening day, and then some of the lowest lows with the runners in scoring position situation from game 2 and game 3, the walks in game 3, the way the Mets lost game 3. Baseball is back. I'll just say that. Baseball is so back.
Yeah, Mets baseball back in particular, because unfortunately, some of the similar themes from 2025 emerged in the last 2 days of this series. But as we usually do when we recap series here on the pod, we'll go back to game 1. We'll do this in order. I mean, you couldn't have drawn it up any better, Jack. To face the Pirates on opening day, you're a nationally televised game, so you've got the entire baseball world watching you. You're going up against Paul Skeens. You've got Freddie Peralta making his Mets debut, and you're thinking this is going to be a good old-fashioned ace-off. Just going to be who can make the smallest of mistakes. And the Mets get to Paul Skeens. They get some help from O'Neill Cruz out there in center field. They put up 11 on the Pirates, and they win the opener of this series. And it was that first inning. It was a 5-run first, the most runs the Mets have ever scored in the first inning of a opening day. They chase Paul Skeens, make him throw nearly 40 pitches in that first inning, and it was everything that you were excited about from this team, right? The patience, the approach from Bo Bichette to hit a sacrifice fly. You had Luis Robert working a really good at-bat to draw a walk. Brett Beatty, the bottom of the lineup, doing things. Carson Benj makes his Mets debut and hits a home run. It was just everything you wanted to see in this game from the Mets, and it got their season off to a great start. And it was Carlos Mendoza's first win on opening day in his third season as Mets manager.
It is crazy. It's nice to see the Mets return to form as the best team in baseball on opening day, and they really did it with a bang. I was at the game at Citi Field on opening day. The energy is just incredible every year on opening day, and especially the weather that we got. It was 70 degrees and sunny. The vibes were high. A lot of excitement about the new players. I saw a few Bichette jerseys already early in the season.
You can confirm something for me, because it felt like this watching the game from the comfort of my couch. Did or did not Carson Benj get the loudest ovation out of any of the Mets that were introduced?
He for sure did.
Okay.
He for sure did.
It felt like it on the broadcast that he got a louder pop than both Lindor and Soto, which is crazy considering it was his debut. But just that's the excitement that was around him, and he delivered with the home run in this game. Yeah, I mean this was quintessential what David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza and the entire Mets organization told us they were trying to build in this offseason. They needed more hitting with runners in scoring position, the patience with the approach. We're not going to strike out as much. 9 of the first 11 runs that the Mets got in this game weren't off of the home run. It was station to station. It was past the baton. And yeah, that may be boring at some cases. It was such a fresh look to things compared to some of the at-bats that we saw, especially in the second half of last season. And you could very clearly see what the Mets are trying to do. Now, yeah, it's not going to work every single day, as we will see as we continue to recap this entire series, but you clearly could see immediately what the vision the Mets had in the offseason, and you can see that what they're trying to do and how they plan to get there.
Absolutely. I mean, you said it with the Paul Skeens thing that we were discussing at the top here. Having Paul Skeens throw almost 40 pitches in the first inning, just working up that pitch count, fouling off pitches, getting deep into the counts, taking your walks when you can get them, and then just taking advantage when he makes the very few mistakes that one of the best pitchers in baseball ever makes, and also taking advantage of poor fielding by the Pirates, specifically O'Neill Cruz, who had a really rough day in center field to start the season. And it gave me the positive feelings that I remembered from the 2024 Mets. Every opportunity that their opponent made a mistake in 2024 and on opening day, it felt like they were seizing on the opportunity. You talk about Carson Benj having a rough first time out against Paul Skeens, striking out on 3 pitches, and it didn't really look competitive. But then coming back and then first pitch swinging against one of the relievers, and I don't remember the 6th, 7th, 8th inning, getting that pitch over the wall, getting the crowd back into it, answering every time the Pirates scored in that game with more runs in the following half inning or an inning after that. It just felt like all of the energy of these new Mets, this new roster, new pitching staff, new coaching staff, like everything felt new and exciting, and it really delivered on in the first game of the series. You could really sense what the Mets and David Stearns were trying to build with this 2026 roster.
You could also see it in the pitching staff, because I don't want us to get through the first game without mentioning Freddie Peralta making his Mets debut. And I think for it being his first start, for it being opening day, for, Freddie characteristically has struggled on opening day. At least each of the last 2 years has been kind of a struggle for him. I thought he did well. He got extremely unlucky because who would have thought Brandon Lau is Babe Ruth when he faces the New York Mets? I mean, they couldn't get him out either of the 3 games of this series, but he hits a wall scraper that has an expected batting average of .030 for the first home run. The second one was a no-doubter, and he crushed the Mets. He got McLean today. It was Sunday as we're recording this. He got McLean today for a home run as well, so he was the nemesis for the Mets in this series. But I think other than that, Freddie kind of settled in really nicely, and you saw what the Mets see in him. Fastball Freddie, you saw the breaking stuff kind of lost a little bit of his breaking stuff as the game went along. It wasn't as sharp later, but he gave the Mets, 5 quality innings on opening day, and, all the buzz about 11 runs and chasing Paul Skeens and the new look offense. Want to make sure that Freddie Peralta, Tobias Myers, and Luis Garcia get their due for the job that they did. Yeah, you were on a Luis Garcia vengeance tour right now. He is, I think if we were the trust tree, Luis Garcia, the bottom rung for you. You anytime he comes into the game, the first 2 games of the series, you text me, you're like, I don't want to see this guy. Get away from a high leverage situation.
I'm glad that the Mets were so comfortably up in the first game of this series, because he came in and it was just like, I didn't feel nervous per se.
Well, Devin had to
I
get
will
the
say
jacket
Devin
off.
Williams
Right.
was warming up in the bullpen in the 9th inning, which is not really where you want to be when you're scoring 11 runs in the first game. But like you said, Freddie Peralta, I didn't know what to expect when the first 2 batters were bloop single and then wall scraper home run. I just remember watching that ball go sky high and thinking there's no way that's going out. That's like either a foul ball or Carson Bench is going to catch that well shy of the warning track, and just kept going and going and scraped over the fence. And then he got him later. But I really liked seeing that despite that rough start, Freddie Peralta really settling back down, getting back in control. He struck out like 5 of the next batters, I think, after
he struck out 4 in a row.
Home run.
Yeah, the next 4 batters in a row, and he finished with 7 strikeouts on the day. So he certainly kind of honed it in from there.
And like you could feel I started to understand a lot more why this guy was the opening day starter as opposed to, your Nolan McLean's or entrenched incumbent Mets veteran like David Peterson. But liked what I saw from him, and I liked what I saw from his co-Brewers former teammate Tobias Myers coming in and kind of being that piggyback role in the bullpen. I really appreciated what I saw from him as well.
Yeah, the Mets love their multi-inning relievers out there in the pen, and they have, at least right now, probably 3 guys that could fit into that role. You saw Tobias Myers in the opener. You saw Sean Manaea do it today. And while I don't think they'll ask him to do it right now on a regular basis, Huascar Brazoban also has that in his tool bag as well. We move to game 2. Go ahead.
Huascar Brazoban, by the way, we'll talk about game 2 and game 3, but he was a major highlight for me as far as this pitching staff so far.
Yeah, I mean, there's a smile that comes onto my face anytime I see Huascar Brazoban come out of the bullpen. Like he was our guy last year, especially because he pitched in every inning imaginable, and so we took a liking to him, and he was really good in the first 30 games of the season or whatever it was, and so to see him back, to see the stuff it played in the WBC. I mean, he looked great in the WBC, and so far through the first 2 appearances of this season, he looks like he's picking up right where he left off in the WBC and in the first half of last year. So yeah, he's certainly one of the more trusted relievers, and I don't think it's a coincidence that he's the guy that Mendoza trusts to go to first when trouble arises out of that pen. Game 2, The Mets capped off the series win with a come-from-behind walk-off win thanks to Luis Robert Jr., his first Mets home run delivered in David Peterson's first start of the year. And this one was interesting because I think as the series progressed, Jack, you felt like we regressed back to 2025 Mets like slowly over the course of the series. But what I liked about this game was that yes, the hitting with runners in scoring position was a problem. They just couldn't solve Mitch Keller. Mitch Keller owns the New York Mets. But it felt like the quality of the at-bats were still better than what we saw last year, right? It just felt like they were still putting together those grindy, we're going to make you work for it at-bats. I mean, Keller only had 3 strikeouts. I mean, put the ball in play. They walked 5 times in the game. Once the bullpen came in, they started really kind of working those at-bats and drawing walks. And it just felt like they couldn't come through with that big hit. And it shouldn't be a surprise. It takes a little bit for offenses to get going. We know it takes forever for Francisco Lindor to get going. Juan Soto struggled in the first half of last year. Bo Bichette's off to a slow start this year, so it shouldn't come as a shock to us that the offense maybe lags a little bit behind the pitching. But I thought this was still, despite it not being an 11-run outburst, I thought it was a better indictment of what the Mets are trying to do this season. And fortunately, they were able to come through with the big hit. They came through with the big hit in the bottom part of the inning. They had the bases loaded with nobody out, and they couldn't score. By the way, I do think that played a role in something that happened today, which we'll get to in a second. And then Robert walks it off in the 10th. Great moment for him. And maybe we use this as the chance. Luis Robert is having an unbelievable start. He got thrown out by like 12 feet on that stolen base attempt that I'm not really sure what happened. But outside of that, the patience is there. He's not flailing at stuff outside of the zone. He's hitting the ball hard. The single that he hit today was smoked. The home run was well struck. I mean, the contact quality is there. He's working really good at bats. The defense has been good in center field. He's showing off the speed. He went first to third in over the weekend as well. So he's been a bright spot so far for this Mets offense.
Oh, absolutely. I think when you look at I'll call them the new Mets this year. You talk about Marcus Semien, Robert, obviously Bichette, Polanco, Carson Bench to a certain extent as a rookie. At least Robert has far and away been the best producer of that group of new Mets. He's batting .667 right now. Like, he has the walk-off home run, and like you said, he's working the best at-bats. His approach seems to be among the best of any Mets hitter through the first 3 games of the season. Our friendly reminder that the Mets were able to acquire him for Luis Angel Acuna, notably not a switch hitter.
Switch hitter. No,
from
switch
the White
hitter,
Sox.
Luis Angel Acuna, yeah.
But it's nice to see the Stearns vision kind of come to fruition here, and especially for a guy like Luis Robert, who I think has been on so many Mets fans' radars for a few seasons now with all the trade rumors that have cropped up over the years, and to see him come through in this big moment. I texted you after the game was over, but for the second game of the season, for the Mets to be able to kind of exercise those demons from 2025, and have a come from behind win in extra innings, have a walk-off after the frustrations of tough runners in scoring position, situational hitting throughout the entire game, to have Robert come through in that moment after Terrence did with his game-tying hit the inning before, like, it felt like a little bit of a exorcism, an overcoming of what 2025 was in a way, and it was nice to see one of the new guys contribute in that way.
I mean, last year after the 8th inning, they didn't win a single game that they were trailing, and they weren't trailing after 8 in this one because it was a tie game, but they were trailing in the bottom of the 10th. They rallied back. They were trailing in the bottom of the 11th. Robert hits the home run. Now, the difference between Saturday and Sunday was the pitching staff, the bullpen, did an excellent job of holding Pittsburgh as the road team to just 1 run. Because as you saw all weekend long, the Mets were able to respond in every extra inning they played with at least 1 run. It was that second run that became a problem on Sunday. It's easy, very easy. I put easy in air quotes. It's difficult to do anything in the sport of baseball, but it's easy when you're putting a runner on second base with nobody out to score 1 run to tie the game, right? And so as a home team, you have a huge advantage when you're able to do that. And credit to everybody. I mean, Luke Weaver was good in this game. Brooks Raley was good in this game. You know, Devin Williams worked out of some trouble. I mean, it felt like I was just watching an Edwin Diaz appearance. Just we got to put runners on the bases, and then we got to work ourselves out of it. And then, you know, Richard Lovelady, he gets 1 run charged against him. It's the most unlucky run you're ever going to see in your life because the ball, like, just doesn't roll foul. But they were able to limit the damage to just one run in both of those innings, and then Robert hits the home run that allows them to win it. And so the pitching was the bright spot. Oh, and by the way, that was vintage David Peterson. Like
Yeah,
that
he
was
looked like first half of 2025
yeah,
David Peterson, like
just
all-star David Peterson.
I'm just gonna throw strikes. I'm gonna let you hit ground balls. Oh, and I don't think this was ever my thought process last year, but we're 3 games in, and I am already defaulting to if a ball is hit on the ground to second base, I just assume Marcus Simeon's going to get there. Like, it's just a default. Oh, it's the 4-3 in your scorecard. Like, he has been so good defensively over there at second base. And so David Peterson can trust the guys behind him because he's got great defenders. I'll just throw a bunch of strikes. You'll hit a ton of weak contact ground balls, and that's how I'll make a living. And by the way, he worked in and out of both self-inflicted trouble because he walked a leadoff batter and not self-inflicted trouble like Bo Bichette throwing the ball nearly into the Mets dugout.
I will say also to the fielding note, aside from that Bichette play, which was not good, a lot of what I've seen from both him and Polanco on the corners as guys who have never played those positions before, I haven't been like mind-blowingly disappointed or upset. Like Bichette had a nice sliding catch in foul territory in this game. He made a nice play on a ground ball. I can't remember the context of that one, but he like it was a little tapper, I think, and he came up firing and had like the fastest throw of his career on any throw. Polanco has had a few nice plays both as a fielder, but also on pitchers fielding the position and making the toss to first base. Like over the first 2 games in the series, Polanco and Bichette, honestly, over the course of the entire series, I think have combined for 2 hits total, or maybe 3 hits between the two of them. But the fielding has been something that I'm not astonished to see. I'm not like clutching my pearls at the poor quality of defense. But again, it's a long season, the small sample size. But it's good to see the defense looking like the priority that David Stern said it was.
Yeah, it hasn't been pretty. Like, I wouldn't describe it as like, flashy and it looks like a bunch of web gems, but I think I'm okay. Well, I'm certainly okay with that because the results have been good, but I think I'm okay with it because there are going to be growing pains. I mean, both of these guys are playing brand new positions. It's not going to look silky smooth in games 1, 2, and 3 of the regular season. And I kind of like that in their quote unquote failing of like Jorge Polanco not like cleanly knocking a ball down. He's kind of bobbling it, and he's got to, scramble and adjust. They're still making the plays. Like Bichette made 3 of those throws up the line in this series. 2 of the 3 turned into outs, 1 didn't. But the 2 that turned into outs, he's learning from. He's going to learn from the one that he didn't throw for an out, the error. But I like that they're maybe not playing their crispest defensively, but they're still getting the good results because that's going to take a lot of the pressure off of them as defenders. And remember, they're not going to play there every day. 3rd game of the season, Beatty was over there at first base. I thought Beatty played well today over there at first, had a really good scoop on a play. I think it was Jake Magnum who he got by having a good stretch to get a play there. So the defense has been good, right? Defense has been fine. You haven't really felt like it's cost the Mets in any big way so far this season. All right, lots to talk about from Sunday, and I hate like hyper fixating on a loss. Like, they won the series, they've looked good. They're 2-1 to start the year. The starting pitching's looked great. So I don't want to dwell on the loss, but it was a rough one because it looked a lot like 2025, like a bullpen that was utilized heavily 2 straight days, couldn't get the big hit. Another extra innings loss where they couldn't come back. Like, it just felt like a rerun of 2025. Where do you want to start with today's game?
I mean, we've kind of been alluding to it throughout so far, but Bo Bichette is having a really, really rough time at the plate. And today was his first welcome to the Mets experience, getting the boos from the crowd at Citi Field. And he actually addressed it after the game.
Said his response.
I loved it as well. Like, he said, I'm surprised it didn't come earlier because my at-bats have been really bad, have been terrible, I think was his word for it. And I deserve the boos, and I'm going to try to get things right. But 3 strikeouts in this game today, several of them with runners in scoring position, looked uncompetitive on at least 2 of them. It's been 3 games so far. He has 12 at-bats or 13 at-bats, and he has 1 hit so far. And it's not It's not ideal when he's striking out in that situation like he did in the 7th inning where runners are on, he's making $42 million a year. You got to come through in that situation with at least putting the ball in play.
Yeah, I mean, in the first 2 innings of this game, it was everybody. It was Lindor, it was Soto, and Bichette. Like, their first 2 times up, they were combined 0 for 6 with 6 strikeouts. Like, that's just not going to work. Like, those guys need to be better. But as the game evolved, Lindor hits the triple, Soto brings him in. Soto hits the big double in the 10th to potentially tie the game. So those guys, as the game evolved, were able to come through. Bichette didn't. Bichette had that chance in the 7th. What was it, 2nd and 3rd with 2 outs? Soto had struck out right before, right in front of him, and it was about as academic as you can get. And he is right now very susceptible to that fastball up in the zone. Like, he is flailing at that pretty consistently. And listen, he's not a strikeout guy, so you just can very easily chalk this up to he's trying to do too much, right? He's learning a new position. He's on a new team. He got paid $42 million a season. Like, he's expected to be this, plug and play all-star in the middle of a lineup. He's in New York. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes into it, and I think it's a case of him trying to do too much. It's 3 games. I'm not worried one bit about Bo Bichette. It's going to be fine. It's just unfortunate that he has had a Francisco Lindor like rough start to a season.
I was going to call it a 2025 April 2025 Juan Soto syndrome, where he's trying to do too much. We saw Juan Soto in the first game last season striking out to Josh Hader with a non-competitive swing on a pitch that was well outside the zone to end the first game of the season.
Bases
Goes
loaded,
on to
right? It was a huge moment
Correct.
in the game where the Mets, for the entirety of the game, couldn't do anything offensively. They get the bases loaded against Hader, and Soto's up in his first big spot as a Met, and he strikes out. And I can remember the sky was falling. Oh, the Mets overpaid. What are they doing? And it took Juan quite a bit to kind of get into the flow, but he finished the season great with runners in scoring position.
He set a career high in home runs last year,
right.
and not to mention the stolen base thing and MVP finish. Like you said, I'm not worried about Bo Bichette. He's too good of a player to not improve as the season goes on. It's a very small sample size, but it is something notable that's going on right now, especially with the booze raining down at Citi Field this early in the season.
Well, lucky for Bo, it's a road trip. 7 games away from Citi Field, so that certainly should probably help if he can get hot away from Citi Field. I think there's 2 other things that I want to talk about from this game before we preview St. Louis. I think, obviously, 3 things. We should probably talk about Nolan McLean making his debut. Amped up is probably one phrase to describe Nolan McLean today. Humming it up there at 98 early and had zero command of his fastball. Like, early on in this game, he could locate that thing. He was missing up into the right-handed batter's box, basically with every single one. Then he started taking a little bit off of it, and he settled in, finished with 8 strikeouts. And I think we take for granted that Nolan McLean's, after today, has thrown 53 big league innings. I think we take for granted that he's only been a full-time starter for like 2 or 3 full seasons now. Like, this is a work in progress. I think the expectation is he's going to be a Cy Young candidate, and yes, he has that potential, but he is still developing and learning his craft. And I think on a day where he didn't have his best stuff, and then he was able to settle into this game, other than, Brandon Lau tagging him for the first home run he's allowed to lefties. 8 strikeouts. You saw the spin. You saw the elite level fastball. It was good. Wasn't great. Now he can kind of settle into his season. And he was mad at himself the entire start. He was so angry at himself that he kept missing.
Yeah, the filthy stuff is still there. Like, you see all of the stuff, the pure stuff that he has, and you see what he can do. Like, if this is a so-so outing where he's throwing 5 innings, only allows 4 hits, 2 runs, 8 strikeouts, and like that home run that you said, I'm going to take that. And I know that he's going to be able to settle down past the jitters of, he's still technically a rookie, right? He qualifies as a rookie this season. This is his first start of his de facto rookie season, and he's coming off of a very high-intensity World Baseball Classic situation where he's pitching for Team USA in the final. I am thrilled with the performance of one start so far this year, and I'm excited to see more of him as he continues to refine the stuff in the zone, the fastball, a ridiculous sweeper that he has. Still very fun to watch, can confirm.
Yeah. I mean, his last 4 outs that he recorded in the game were all strikeouts. So, and, They got him in the first after he walked the first two batters. A single by O'Hearn scored the run, and then Lau got him for the home run. That was it. He worked in and out of everything else, and again, had the strikeouts working. The two things that I wanted to talk about: the send of Francisco Lindor in the 10th. Everybody is upset about this, and I'm not as angry as other people. I don't mind the send when you consider in the 10th inning of the game yesterday, you had the bases loaded with nobody out, and you had the meat of the order up, and you couldn't do a thing. You guys couldn't do a thing. So
Correct.
that's probably playing into the decision. Bichette, who has struggled, is up next. Polanco, who didn't have a good day at the box office, was behind him. It's O'Neal Cruz. I think that plays into it as well. He's had an adventure out there in center field.
Yes.
And I think if worst case scenario, Lindor gets thrown out at home, you've got a 4-3 game, Soto at second, one out. You're basically just kind of resetting extra innings with just one out instead of no outs. And, I heard everybody, oh, well, Polanco hit a fly ball, and so if Lindor was on third, he would have scored. Really? So you think the pitching plan by Pittsburgh was going to be the same with Lindor on third to Jorge Polanco and to Bo Bichette? No, the entire way you approach the at-bat is different, right? They play the infield in, right? The way they may attack and go away. They may walk Bichette to go to first base to face Polanco, right? Because that run doesn't matter at that point of the game. It would be Soto at second that was the problem. So many different ways that plays out. I don't mind the aggressiveness. I would rather be aggressive too early in the season and need to rein it in than to be too passive, and we have a situation where we're not sending Tyrone Taylor in the middle of the season. What was that, the Milwaukee game where we didn't put Tyrone Taylor out there as a pinch hitter, and then we sent Marte and we got torched at home plate? Like, it's those, what was it, the Cleveland game where they didn't send the runner? Like, those types of moments that you can't have, and so I'd rather be overly aggressive and rein it in, and the Mets just couldn't hit in this game. That was really the main problem.
2 for 10 with runners in scoring position, following 3 for 14 in the second game of the season. You talked about how it felt like this series, we started to see, as the series went on, regression to the 2025 Mets. That stat right there, the runners in scoring position, is kind of the culmination of that, especially with, the solid day pitching-wise that the Mets had until Richard Lovelady in the 10th inning, which I think that's probably the last thing you want to talk about.
Yeah.
But, as far as the send, look, I don't love a runner getting thrown out at the plate when you could have had a guy on third base with no outs, having only a guy on second base with one out. I don't love the math there as much. And I will say it's a lot easier for me to say I don't like the aggression when the result was what it was. If O'Neal Cruz screws up a throw, screws up the way he fields the ball, if Jake Mangum is the one who ends up fielding that ball instead of O'Neal Cruz, there's so many different factors that could have pleied into a positive result for the Mets. And it's very easy to, with hindsight goggles on, say, well, that was not the right decision by Tim Leitber, I believe, is the third base coach now. It is what it is. At the end of the day, the Mets won the series. It's just a very frustrating way to lose because it felt like the sweep was in reach. But again, like you said, one day prior, they had bases loaded, no outs, with the 1, 2, 3 hitters coming up, and they don't get the ball out of the infield. So, it's just kind of another fun day being a Mets fan, from a frustrating loss to the Pirates, kind of putting a damper on an otherwise really good series.
And Carlos Mendoza explained it afterwards that before the series, they identified that the Pirates were a team that they wanted to be aggressive against. Lindor also said that the moment the ball was hit, it was his intention to try to score. So it felt like everybody was on the same page of what the strategy was going in. And maybe next time the brakes get thrown up there, right? Again, I'd rather be aggressive and need to rein it in than to try to teach and preach aggressiveness. That is a hard trait to put into somebody. It's easier to put a governor on somebody to say, okay, we can't take too many chances. Also, it's March. Relax, please.
Yeah. Game
Relax.
3 of the season, and it was an extra innings, 1-run loss.
Now, there is something I do want to overreact to. Because what is Carlos Mendoza doing with his bullpen?
I have seen too much Richard Lovelady already through 2 games, and I've seen too much Luis Garcia through 2 games. I don't understand. I understood the Lovelady decision maybe in game 2. I think the bigger questions I have about game 3 are the lack of some other pitchers getting into this game in the situations that the Mets found themselves in late in the game.
The Mets used 3 pitchers today that pitched in Saturday's game. They used Luke Weaver 2 days in a row. They used Huascar Braziban 2 days in a row, although if you want to say that he only threw 4 pitches on Saturday, so it doesn't really count. Okay, I would concede that it was a rather quick outing for Huascar Braziban, but you used Richard Lovelady, who threw 21 pitches, the most out of anybody in the pen on Saturday. You used him 2 days in a row. And so afterwards, apparently the phrase was unavailable, Devin Williams and Brooks Raley. Unavailable because there are 2 highest leverage arms, and so we don't want to hurt them, because you used 3 other guys 2 days in a row. And I'm sorry, but I would have much rather Brooks Raley than Richard Lovelady out there if you wanted to go to a lefty. And once we get to extras, there's no save situation on the table. So Devin Williams, you should use him in the next highest leverage situation you could get. And so, okay, they're unavailable. Fine. It's early in the season. You don't want to push them. Okay. Tomorrow now, we can use this as a nice, easy transition into previewing the series with the Cardinals. Richard Lovelady not going to be available 3 days in a row. Huascar Braziban not going to be available 3 days in a row. Luke Weaver not going to be available 3 days in a row. So your bullpen going into tomorrow, Sean and I are probably not going to work back-to-back days. So your bullpen going into tomorrow in terms of fresh, healthy, readily available arms, it's going to be Tobias Myers, Luis Garcia, Brooks Raley, and Devin Williams. And that's it.
And you got Clay Holmes on the bump to start?
I was just going to say, if only the Mets had a starter that you could trust to go deep into the games. Oh, wait, they've got Clay Holmes and Kodai Senga, the next 2 starters up. And so maybe they can get this back on track. Maybe Tobias Myers gets 6+ outs tomorrow, and that's the solution to this. And that feels like what it's going to be. But here we go already with the Mets kind of playing bullpen whack-a-mole, because they got 5 innings from McLean today. They got 5 1/3 on Saturday from Peterson. So they've had to do a lot of heavy lifting from their bullpen. And so, again, it's the first time through the rotation, so I don't expect the length to be there. But without a day off, they're going to play 5 games in a row. This is where Carlos Mendoza has to be really careful. And so he needs 2 things. He needs a deep Clay Holmes start, and he needs Tobias Myers to give him some length. Like, that's the recipe out of this.
I mean, we saw Tobias Myers, he threw 3 innings, almost 40 pitches in the first game of the series. And, like, you expect that he's probably going to have the similar role for the rest of the season that he had in this first series, where one of the games he's giving you length to preserve the rest of the bullpen, but then he probably won't be available for the next day, maybe next 2 days. In this case, next 3 days, because the Mets had off on Friday. I am concerned also about the usage of Huascar Braziban this early in the season. He's just coming off of the World Baseball Classic, so he had some extra innings on his arm there. He had 2 games in a row in this series, including 2 ups with an inning and 2/3 today on Sunday. Yeah, he only threw 18 pitches total, but like, I don't want to see another Reed Garrett situation where we're taxing the heck out of this guy's arm this early in the season. And with Braziban last season, a lot of different situations where you can't trust him down the stretch because you've used him 8 million times through the first 3 months of the season. And by the time you get to August and September, when the games start to really matter, he's either unreliable or injured. And I think another part of this equation that we haven't really talked about too much, I don't know what the Mets have in Sean Manaea anymore at this point of his career.
Let's talk about him. Let's talk about Sean.
The fastball velocity is down. The strike zone command is down. He's not giving you the length that you want because of the lack of strike zone command. He threw 29 pitches today, got through only an inning and a third with 2 walks and 2 strikeouts and a hit. I think the Mets want him to be a piggyback guy the way Tobias Myers is, but you're not going to get that if you're only throwing an inning and a third on 29 pitches.
So the thing that worries me about Manaea is he's a 2-pitch pitcher, even when he was a starter. He is a sinker sweeper. He kind of throws a changeup, but not really. And one of his 2 pitches right now, he has a double-edged sword problem. He can't command it, and it doesn't have the velocity. And so it makes it really difficult to find where you're going to be able to get him into a game that you feel comfortable that if it kind of gets a little squirrely, it's okay, and getting him enough reps so that you keep him fresh. Because like today, he had to come into a game that it's a tie game, and the Mets are trying to win a baseball game, but they've got a bunch of guys that are unavailable. They need to get Manaea work, and so you're kind of, gritting your teeth and hoping that he can get outs, and today he did, but maybe next time he won't. And it is going to be a really, really interesting next couple of weeks to see how, because he's the odd man out in the rotation. So far, there's no reason to make any changes to the rotation. We'll see what Clay Holmes and Kodai Senga have to offer. There's not really a spot for him there. He's going to have to carve out this multi-inning reliever role with Tobias Myers. I mean, they're going to be the new, Max Kranick and Jose Butto combo. And I just don't know if you can trust him with that. And so that's really something to keep an eye on. Okay, St. Louis. Next up, 3-game series in St. Louis starting tomorrow night, or tonight when you're listening to this podcast. And this is a very different St. Louis Cardinals team. This is not the St. Louis Cardinals team of old. And the big storyline, the big player to keep an eye on is the guy that's hitting leadoff for them, J.J. Weatherholt, because every rookie that's been called up apparently is
very good.
Is Babe Ruth. You got Chase DeLauder. You've got Weatherholt. You got Kevin McGonigal in Detroit. Just everybody.
Carson Bench hitting the home run in his debut.
Carson Bench. Sal Stewart's playing well for Cincinnati. Murakami's crushing the ball for Chicago. I mean, you got just rookies making an impact all over the place. But you got J.J. Weatherholt and Mason Wynn. Those are the two guys. You got mainstays like Nolan Gorman and Alec Burleson. We may see old friend Ryan Stanek. He is one of the closers by committee for this St. Louis team. The 3 starters that the Mets will see in this series: Kyle Leahy, Andre Palenti, and then Matthew Libator will be the 3 starters. So they'll see the lefty in the finale of this series. They will miss Dustin May, which, as somebody who's been a Dustin May stan for a really long time, I'm quite all right with that. But that's what the Mets will face, and they will be bringing Clay Holmes, Kodai Senga, and Freddie Peralta as the starters on their side. Should be an off day for Luis Robert tomorrow out there in center, so it'll be our first view of Carson Bench in center, and we'll see how Carlos Mendoza. Gary on the broadcast mentioned that they may move Bench to center and put Beatty in right field. But my question to that is then who's going to DH? Is Jared Young just going to slot in as the DH on these days?
I think that might be a Mark Vientos, Jared Young situation where it's Jared Young for
because
the
it's two
righty.
righties, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so because I was trying to figure out yes, but who's going to DH? Because it's
or it's Vientos plays first base or Jared Young, Polanco DHs. I don't know.
Well, if Polanco or Bichette are going to DH, you would assume that's because they're going to put Beatty in at one of those 2 spots. So the reason why I bring this up and we're talking it out is this is going to be our first look of how Carlos tries to put this puzzle together with his Swiss Army knife in Brett Beatty and how he tries to get days off everywhere else. And I'm totally fine with, the Mets playing it very safe with Luis Robert, making sure that he stays healthy because that's been a concern for him in the past. He's played well. You kind of want to leave the hot bat in there, but you have to also understand that giving him a day off his feet and also having that bat to be able to come off the bench late in the game if you need it is a nice thing to have. So it's interesting. Like the Mets had that day off in the middle of the first series, but now they're going to play a bunch here in a row. They don't have an off day until next Monday, so they're going to play 7 days in a row over the next week. Actually, it will be 9 days in a row if you include the last 2 of the Pirate series. So really interesting test to see how Carlos Mendoza gets some guys some days off.
I am particularly interested to see what the Kodai Senga situation looks like in 2026 because spring training was phenomenal for him. He looked like returning to ace status. Kodai Senga, the guy that we saw for the first couple of months of 2025 before that injury, if he can step up and be that guy in the rotation, I think to a certain extent he's an X factor for the Mets rotation. So I'm really excited and a bit anxious to see what his first start against these St. Louis Cardinals looks like.
Yeah, and you have to look also, it's early on in the season, and Carlos Mendoza is also going to try to get all of his bench into some games. So you'd have to expect against the lefty on what would that be, Wednesday? That's a Tyrone Taylor start. Maybe Carson
Mark
Bench take a day off.
Vientos.
Mark Vientos, you're in there as well, and so you'll start to see those guys get some action. Good to see Mark have that pinch hit and be able to get a hit in this series. That was a good, encouraging
Looked
sign.
better than he did for most of spring training, frankly.
Right.
Yeah.
Again, one at bat, but hey, the closer we can get to Swaggy V back, the better it's going to be for the New York Mets. So it is the first series win of 2026. The Mets start 2-1. They are looking up at the 3-0 Miami Marlins in the National League East. Just want to put it out there. Looking up at the 3-0.
That's a good reminder that we're still in March and there is 159 games still to play in the season.
By the way, the Mets currently, according to Fangraphs, have a 46.4% chance to win the division. That is well in front of the Braves, who have a 29.1% chance, second most in the division. So just
pretty impressive.
Putting it out there. So yeah, a series win. Unfortunately, not a series sweep for the Mets, but best part is there's more baseball to be played. Now it is a 7-game road trip for this team. We are going to bring you the next episode of this podcast Thursday at some point. So we're going to record it probably Wednesday afternoon, evening after the Mets finish up that series. It'll drop in your podcast feeds on Thursday ahead of the Giants series. So we'll try to get these out as quickly as possible. But the moment series are done, we'll get that recap episode to you in your podcast feed. Or if you're watching us on the YouTube side of things, the march is on. 250 subscribers before the All-Star break. That is the goal that we are setting for the program on YouTube. So if you can do us a favor, go over to the YouTube channel, Jack McKessie, SSY, and subscribe to the show over there. You can watch this show instead of just listening to it in the podcast feed if that is your preferred medium of choice. It's going to do it for us. We went 41 minutes on the first series of the year. Baseball's back, baby.
We're back.
We love it. It is a great time. But that is going to do it for us here. We're back to recap the St. Louis series. Hopefully, it is another series win for the Mets, and they can keep stacking these to start 2026. As always, let's go Mets.
Let's go Mets.